All right. Good morning. This is Friday, Good Friday for all of you Christians out there. Easter weekend, April 18th. Is that right? Wow. Yeah. So apparently time is traveling still. Hey there, Jonas. You were first. Tan Man, hello. Tom's table. LeBron is here. Fellow enemies of the state. That's right. Careful though. Maybe we should start a signal chat. The more I think about it, I'm kind of half joking. Cool Bananas here. Oh, Mrs. Beat's even here. Shout out to Mrs. Beat, who is the my favorite human being on the planet. We are all domestic terrorists. That's right. That's right. Oh my gosh. Hello, Paper Baboon. Sandman Base is here. Tavieston Tiger, hello from Finland. You had local elections there? Nice. Thank you for sharing that good news. Fino, hello. CB. Oh, yeah, let's this is the primary purpose of today's stream. So, for those of you who don't know, maybe I should fill everybody in, but I'm sure most of you already are somewhat aware. There's a dude named, I guess I'll say his full name, Kilmar Armando Ábrego García. But Kilmar, we'll just stick with Kilmar. Kilmar was wrongfully deported to an El Salvador prison, a notorious prison, a prison that is known for atrocities and human rights abuses. And he is not an American citizen, but he's a national. He has legal status. He married an American woman, has a family with her. He first came to, I believe he first came to the United States when, as a young man, as a teenager, I think he was like 16, to escape the gangs down there in El Salvador. This is back when it was a lot less safe in El Salvador. That was like 2011 or so. And so he sought asylum status in the United States, although he didn't officially get it. And so he got arrested at, like, I think he was seeking work at, I know this is like a stereotype now at this point, but he was seeking work at Home Depot and he got arrested there. And so that's when they were like, "Hey, dude, you're not legal." But he's like, "Hey, but I'm seeking asylum status. I was fleeing this horrible gang in El Salvador." Long story short, he did win the case. A judge granted him basically I don't know what the exact term was, but because I don't think it was asylum, but basically the judge said it was okay for him to be in the United States. And so flash forward to a couple months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, he gets pulled over and he actually has his like kid in the car with him. And the police say, "Hey, dude, you are not supposed to be in this country. We need to arrest you and you will be deported." And shortly thereafter he was, and his family has not been able to see him. And it's just one case of probably many, but it's the most notable case that's been going on because last Friday, I believe it was last Friday, or maybe even over the weekend, last weekend, since the last time I saw you, the Supreme Court unanimously 9-0 said that President Trump had to do whatever he could to safely return Kilmar to the United States, and that the Trump administration was wrong to deport him. And actually, the Trump administration, if you go back a few weeks, they admitted that it was an accident, that he was not supposed to be deported. He was deported due to a, quote, administrative error. They literally said that. They admitted the mistake. But now, after the Supreme Court decision, all of a sudden, the Trump administration is saying, no, No, Kilmar's actually a bad dude. He's a gang member. He's a terrorist. Yeah, he's a terrorist. And they're making all these excuses. And they're like, oh, no. We can't do anything to get him back. El Salvador has to give permission to give him back. What? Like, you could get him back easily. Like, we're the United freaking States here. So that would just seem like excuses. And plus, the Supreme Court ordered you to do something about it, and you're doing nothing. And so this has led to many people saying there's a constitutional crisis, because this is the first clear case where a president is just ignoring a Supreme Court order, not just a Supreme Court order, a unanimous one. So all the conservatives on the bench saying, Trump, you need to return Kilmar here. So a development that happened literally yesterday was a senator from Connecticut, a Democratic senator, went to El Salvador and apparently met with Kilmar. There's photos of it. It seems a little off to me. It seems a little fishy. I don't know what to think about it. It comes across as propaganda, frankly, because I'm just like, okay, is this what El Salvador wants you to see? Or is this what the United States wants you to see? There's no additional context from third parties. If you look at the reporting on it, like, let me just pull up the story that I read last night. Let's see if I can find it. It was from the AP, but let me just share this anyway. Check the comments as well. Dang, the ads are so bad. This is basically what I just told you. There is his wife, Jennifer Vasquez Sura, esposa de Kilmar Ábrego García, quien fue deportado por él a El Salvador, habla durante una conferencia de prensa in Hyattsville, Maryland, Friday, April. Yeah, so this is, I mean, this is a very public case. Everybody knows about it. Everybody has strong opinions about it. I'm sure there's more cases, though. We just don't know about it. What the heck is with these ads, dude? Come on, AP. All right, guys. Yeah, Trump never admits that he's wrong about anything. He's definitely a fascist at this point. I don't think we can deny it anymore. Or he's a wannabe fascist. He's trying to be a fascist. The Constitution and checks and balances are holding that back for now, kind of, because now even the Supreme Court, it looks like he's not listening to the Supreme Court. Oh, thank you. Gracias. Yeah, Jonas. I have not seen The Apprentice movie. I heard it's really good. Okay. So anyway, oh, what's this? Okay. His judge ordered he wasn't to be deported back because his life would be in danger. Yeah. Thank you for adding that context, Aiden. So the latest development, let me just share. Actually, I responded on Twitter to this. So let me see if I can. I even wrote that it smells like propaganda. Here we go. So this is the senator I was telling you about, Chris Van Hollen, and he shared this photo. There's other photographs that are shared. And it says, like, I mean, he's wearing a Chiefs cap, which is, I did not see that coming. And apparently it's him. It's Kilmar. So he said, the senator said, I said my main goal of this trip was to meet with Kilmar. Tonight I had that chance. I have called his wife, Jennifer, to pass along his message of love. I look forward to providing a full update upon my return. Yeah, we look forward to that as well. There should be hopefully an update by the end of today. He should be returning by the end of today, the senator. So we'll learn a lot more, but we're going to react to a video, I think, by Legia Miller, who I've reacted to before, at least once, if not twice, who is a lawyer and released a video about the potential constitutional crisis that this has caused. But yeah, like, There are other photographs that, like, the name of the El Salvador dictator escapes me. He is a dictator. Yeah. Bukele. He tweeted out something too, which let's see if there it is. Look at that picture up there. Oh my gosh. Anyway, see that? He tweeted. Okay, first of all, Kilmar, Ábrego, García miraculously risen from the, quote, death camps and torture, now sipping margaritas with Senator Van Hollen in the tropical paradise of El Salvador. So he shares even more pictures. This is just a publicity stunt. And then he followed it up with he retweeted this guy. He actually did it. Chris Van Hollen did my meme, which is, oh gosh, he's retweeted Michael Knowles. But the latest thing he just tweeted out that he pinned was, now that he's been confirmed healthy, he gets the honor of staying in El Salvador's custody. Oh, wow. So what are the charges? Like, this guy never got due process. He's an innocent man. There's no crimes. He has not been convicted of anything. It's messed up. Like, how you just throw some random guy in jail because you want to? Like, it's crazy. I like, what is he there for? Why is he in custody? Why is he there? Anyway, so this is clearly messed up. If you don't think it's messed up, maybe you're not informed about it that much. I don't know. Oh, that's okay, Eli. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, it's literally just some guy. Like, there's no evidence of him doing anything wrong. It could happen to anybody. That's why it's terrifying to some people, especially like if you are an immigrant. You know, like I'm a white dude with ancestors that go back to the 1600s in this continent. I don't feel as nervous, but at the same time, I've openly talked trash about the president. And every day I'm like, well, maybe I should just like shut up about criticisms. Like, I try to do it in a nice way, but like, clearly Trump is making all these huge mistakes, and I feel like I have an obligation to speak up because I've studied American history, American political history enough where I think I know something about it. And it's like, okay, I'm not just gonna, I don't know. So, but at the same time, there's this chilling effect to this happening because the so-called party of free speech, the Republican Party, they are really targeting people that are critical, especially of like Israel. They're targeting a lot of people that have protested to defend Palestinians and against the Israeli government. So that to me is the most troubling part. I don't think Kilmar has done any protesting in his entire life. He's just some guy that got, wrong place, wrong time. Sure, he's not a legal citizen, but a judge said that he could stay. And then later the Supreme Court said he should return. So it's just like, okay, we're just ignoring courts here. And if you're doing that, then you're ignoring checks and balances, and you might as well have an authoritarian type of government. You might as well just, if you're just going to say the president can ignore courts, then you're saying the president is above the law. The president's not supposed to be above the law. Okay. I shouldn't have to say this. This is like basic, American government 101. This is what I used to teach my students in high school. They all understood it very well. They agreed with it. There's no issue here. This is not controversial. And yet here we are. We have people defending Trump still. A lot of people on Twitter just like straight up defending fascism now openly. I know Twitter doesn't represent most of society. Most Americans are obviously upset right now by what's happening, as you see with approval polls of the president right now. But regardless, this is just messed up that we're living through these times. So let's try to remain hopeful, and let's react to this video here. Let's see what Legion Miller has to say. Obviously, she's someone who does not hide her bias at all. She's clearly strongly against Trump, it always has been, and clearly leans to the left and identifies as a Democrat. So keep that in mind as you watch her. But still, a lawyer knows her stuff.
An innocent man's deportation case is being used as a litmus test to see how far the Trump administration is willing to push the bounds of the law and flout the rule of the judiciary. So far, it's not looking great for freedom and democracy. Kilmar Ábrego García came to the U.S. nearly 15 years ago, entered without authorization, but then worked through the system to obtain an immigration court order giving him protected status that allowed him to work and remain here legally because of his fear of gang violence in his home country of El Salvador. An immigration court ruling from 2019 explicitly barred him from ever being deported back to El Salvador. Then, 1 month ago, Ábrego García was detained without warning, given no opportunity to see a judge or plead his case, and deported to El Salvador. Not only deported, but imprisoned in Secot, the Salvadorian prison known for human rights abuses, a prison from which no inmate has ever been released. In the ensuing month, Ábrego García's case has received global attention. The Supreme Court of the United States has weighed in, and every judge who's heard this case has pretty much unanimously determined that Ábrego García should never have been deported. The Trump administration itself admitted he was deported due to administrative error, and yet it now claims that his return is impossible. As government attorneys drag their feet, it feels like the entire country is watching this case with bated breath to see just how far the Trump administration is willing to go to flout the power of the judiciary, and how far the judiciary is willing to go to try to stop them. Just hours ago, a judge in another case involving planes of Venezuelan migrants ruled that there was probable cause to hold.
I explained this earlier. I don't know, maybe you just joined us or something, but really quickly, it could be propaganda by the El Salvador government, or it could be propaganda by the senator Van Hollen. I don't know. We're not getting any objective information from these photographs being released, other than that apparently he's alive. Like, I'm pretty sure that's him. It looks like him compared to that other photograph. But even then, like, okay, what else do we know? We don't know anything else. So I guess some people were afraid that he was being tortured and he was killed. So, but I just think that we need to kind of wait to see what develops with this story before we kind of form opinions about it. So that's what I meant by that when I said it was propaganda. Do you have a tardy pass, Matt? Where's your tardy pass? If you don't, you need to check in with the office, buddy. No, I'm kidding. You're fine. Okay, back to Legia here.
The Trump administration in criminal contempt. The outcome will either be a judicial line drawn in the sand protecting our country from complete authoritarian takeover, or an indication that judges from the Supreme Court on down no longer have the power to stop Trump from doing exactly what he wants. What does this case mean? How is the Trump administration spinning this in their favor? And how could the consequences of the outcomes ripple out to impede the rights of not just immigrants, but everyone in America? Let's get into it. Like I said, the eyes of the nation and the world are on the Ábrego García case, so naturally this leads to numerous news reports about the case. This article from Democracy Now! Caught my eye with the headline,
must be a Ground News sponsorship. Yep. Yeah, definitely check out Ground News. They're not paying me to say that right now. I promote them anyway. Although they have paid me sometimes as sponsored content.
By one side of the political
I definitely
spectrum.
Go there all the time.
For example, no right-leaning news sources are covering the headline that Trump's tariffs are highly likely to reignite inflation.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Scan my QR code, plan I use, which comes to about $5.
No, do not join Ground News with her QR code. Use my QR code. Come on.
Per month.
I'm just kidding.
Ground News is subscriber funded, so they don't rely on ads.
Yeah,
through Judge Paula Zinnis, ordered the government to, quote, facilitate and effectuate the return of Ábrego García to the United States. The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court to vacate that order. In a unanimous response published on April 10th, the U.S. Supreme Court said, quote, the order properly requires the government to facilitate Ábrego García's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. The district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs.
Which they're going to do. It may take a couple weeks, but, it's clear the Supreme Court saying we need to facilitate things so that he returns. The only question is how to do it.
For its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. Okay, so as with many legal things, the central dispute here really boils down to two words and how we define them: facilitate versus effectuate. The Supreme Court said, yes, absolutely, the government does have an obligation to facilitate the return of Ábrego García, but a judge ordering the executive branch to effectuate his return might go beyond judicial authority and step on the toes of executive branch powers, which is stupid, but we'll get to that. We're not going off any statutory definition of facilitate and effectuate here. We're just going to go off the plain dictionary meaning. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines facilitate as to make something easier or to help bring something about. It defines effectuate as to cause or bring about something or to put something into effect or operation. So it's not a black and white distinction, but they're basically saying, yes, the government should facilitate his return to the U.S. to help bring about that outcome. But we're not clear that they can be ordered to effectuate his return, meaning to actually bring about his return. And so it was sent back down to Judge Zinnes to determine the exact scope of the word effectuate and whether it was within her authority to order that. In response, Judge Zinnes clarified the meaning of effectuate by removing it altogether, saying that instead, quote, the court hereby amends the order to direct that defendants take all available steps to facilitate the return of Ábrego García to the United States as soon as possible. So they don't have to get to whether effectuate is within her power. She's just directing them to take all steps available to them to facilitate Ábrego García's return, to help bring it about, which the Supreme Court said it definitely should do. She then ordered that the government, by the morning of Friday, February 11th, so this past Friday, provide a declaration with information including Ábrego García's current whereabouts and what steps the government has taken or will take to facilitate his return. But then Friday morning rolls around and the government's like, so sorry, we need more time. No, not 2 hours. No, not the weekend. Sorry, we're going to need until Tuesday to really review this order and be able to get back to you, which is stupid. The Supreme Court order was literally 2 pages long, and Judge Zinnes' request of the government was incredibly straightforward. The Trump administration argued that it was simply impracticable to reveal potential steps before they're reviewed and vetted, saying, quote, foreign affairs cannot operate on judicial timelines, in part because it involves sensitive, country-specific considerations wholly inappropriate for judicial review, despite the fact that she literally told them they could file under seal.
I didn't know they said that. That's kind of funny. It's like if your boss says, hey, you need to do this get this to me by Friday. That's your deadline. And you respond, look, I don't work with timelines. Okay. A bunch of things can happen that complicate the matter. I don't do timelines. I'm sorry.
It's all stupid, but we'll get into that. Judge Zinnes ordered the government to provide her with daily updates as to Ábrego García's status and what they have done to facilitate his return. And as you might guess, the updates they did provide were petulant and blatantly devoid of information. On Saturday, they confirmed that he is alive and in Secot, though it continued to defy her order to tell her what they're doing to facilitate his return. The government's statement on Sunday said it had nothing to add. Ábrego García's lawyers asked the judge to order the government to explain why it shouldn't be held in contempt for violating court orders. And on Tuesday, yesterday, the judge told the government to wipe their calendars for the next 2 weeks because she's allowing Ábrego García's lawyers to move forward with collecting evidence as to whether or not the government has done anything to get Ábrego García back, saying the government defied a clear Supreme Court order. And this will include taking depositions, so that's sworn testimony in the form of sit-down interviews of usually up to 7 or more hours in length of key Trump administration officials, plus information and document requests that, at least in regular court settings, the government has to respond to. And this can be a lengthy process that will almost certainly be made lengthier because as part of the process, the government can object to literally everything Ábrego García's lawyers attempt to uncover.
Really
every question they ask, every document.
They're just going to delay it as much as possible with that obstruction
they request in writing and in those long depositions can be objected to. And this leads to lengthy back and forths between the parties as to whether or not the government has the grounds to object, which will have to eventually be decided by the judge for every question. for every document request. And the government will likely claim attorney privilege, national security concerns, executive privilege, et cetera, for everything. So 2 weeks is frankly a conservative estimate as to how long this step will take. Meanwhile, Kilmar Ábrego García has been and continues to be in El Salvador, his freedom taken from him, forcibly removed from his wife and family and the country he's lived in for 14 years, having committed no crime that the government can prove, sitting in one of the most violent, inhumane prisons in the world, where human rights abuses are known to occur and where members of the very gang he was trying to escape are also being housed.
Yeah, that's what's
and every day
what's
the
crazy.
government drags its feet on this is another
It's
day
like
when this man
his worst nightmare. You know, he was the gang. I don't remember which gang specifically it was, but apparently this gang was terrorizing his family, like his mom, back in El Salvador back in 2011, and that's why he fled. I mean, his worst nightmare was coming back to this, and they not only return him to El Salvador, they sent him to the prison, the notorious prison where all of these gang members, many of these gang members are actually staying. That's just, to me, insane.
man's freedom is being lawlessly, cruelly taken from him without ever having been given the chance to set foot inside a court to defend himself before he was detained. The injustice is staggering, and yet the Trump administration is celebrating this as a victory. Ábrego García has never been charged with a crime. Let me say that again. He has never been charged with any crime, not immigration related, not gang related, nothing. The government has never charged this man with any crime at any time.
Yeah.
The Trump administration, after admitting that his deportation was an error, which, by the way, the lawyer that admitted that in court has since been fired, has nevertheless said, well, he's a member of MS-13, so it's fine anyway. He'd be a danger to the public if we brought him back.
That was the name of the
The
gang.
problem with that argument is that, as I say over and over and over, he was still owed due process rights, whether or not he was a gang member.
That's the
which,
most
by the way, the
important
government
thing.
has provided zero proof of his gang affiliation other than an unknown confidential informant alleging he was a member of the MS-13 branch in Long Island, New York, a place he has never lived or potentially even visited.
I can't get over the fact that how much the Trump administration is blatantly lying about this too. They're calling Kilmar a terrorist. They're calling him a gang member without any evidence whatsoever. If he does make it back, he should immediately sue the Trump administration for defamation, because there are millions, if not tens of millions of Americans now that truly believe that Kilmar is a terrorist and gang member, because members of the Trump administration have very publicly lied about this, including Trump's press secretary, whatever the fart her name is. She's repeatedly called him a terrorist. Like, wow.
We give even the most heinous of criminals due process rights. Ted Bundy got to waste all our tax dollars and time with his day in court. And don't tell me, well, he was a citizen, so it's different, because that means that you're defending Ted Bundy. And is that really the position that you want to be taking? Yes, even non-citizens are guaranteed due process rights.
Yes.
The Constitution says people get due process, not citizens. And
also, they get, there are multiple Supreme Court cases that have made it very clear that you don't just have to be an American citizen to get the protection of the Bill of Rights. I've made a couple videos about these cases. One of the ones that first pops in my head is Filer v. Doe. Filer v. Doe is the case in which you had the children of undocumented immigrants that were attending public schools, and the court said that these students could attend these public schools because education was a right guaranteed under the Bill of Rights, and the Bill of Rights is for every human being, not just citizens. So when you hear a Trumper say, oh, well, he's not a citizen, so he doesn't get due process or the same right. Bull crap! No! And also, do they know what due process means? Due process just means you have the right to defend yourself from charges. The Fifth and Sixth Amendments, basically. The rights of the accused. You have the right to, you're innocent till proven guilty. You have the right to remain silent. If you can't afford a judge, one will be provided to you. Basically, the Miranda rights that are read to you when you're arrested, as which we get from the Supreme Court case, Miranda v. Arizona. All of that is due process. That is what we should all take for granted, not just American citizens. Again, every person who is arrested by an American. So it doesn't matter if he's a citizen or not.
Yes, there are parts of the Constitution that do say citizens on purpose. So it wasn't an oversight in the writing of the 5th or 14th Amendments, which is where your due process rights originate, in case you're curious. And contrary to what the Trump administration would have us all believe, immigrants, whether here legally or not, are in fact people. Human persons. But the Trump administration, in dehumanizing immigrants, is also betting on the fact that most of us haven't read the Constitution when they argue that, in fact, immigrants aren't allowed due process rights. It's only for citizens. That is patently false, and contrary to not only the plain language of the Constitution, but also to the numerous court cases that have interpreted due process in this country, just so we're clear. But as any good propaganda machine is wont to do, the Trump administration has spun the Supreme Court ruling as a victory, saying, despite fact and basic understanding of the English language, that the Supreme Court found unanimously in their favor in that facilitate versus effectuate decision. They've spun it as the court finding that Judge Zinnes clearly overstepped her judicial authority in ordering the return of Ábrego García because it is not within her power to make the government effectuate his return. This, despite the clear and unambiguous language of the Supreme Court saying they were explicitly denying the Trump administration's request and that the Trump administration should make every effort to facilitate his return. They are then taking their invented victory that the Supreme Court said a judge can't order them to return Ábrego García to then turn around and say there's absolutely no way to facilitate his return because that's clearly well established as within the president's diplomacy powers. As always, their work is ultimately to get all of the power in the hands of the president. So they'll take every opportunity they can to say that another branch is stepping on presidential toes, which goes against our 250-year history of relying on checks and balances to ensure that the three branches of government are co-equal. But as we
Well, this legislative branch is supposed to be the most important, supposed to be. But to her point also, like, the president all of a sudden now is like, hey, we can't bring Kilmar home because when we say home, we mean the United States. Okay, that's his home. That's where his family is. Home is where your family is. Home is where the heart is. Okay, sure, he probably has family members in El Salvador still. He moved away from there 14 years ago, so I imagine that he still has lots of relatives there. But his wife and kids are in the United States. And so anyway, so when the president says, oh, my hands are tied, I can't bring him back to the United States. But at the same time, ignoring court orders, he's like, well, I'm too weak. But at the same time, he's like wanting to dramatically expand the power of the presidency. So there's a bit of that. Basically, it's at odds with each other. Ultimately, I think he wants the president to have way more power. But it's just kind of funny how all of a sudden I can't do anything. All of a sudden, when the president has been expanding power to the executive branch more and more and more, the longer he's been in office.
This administration likes to ignore facts and make things up as they go. It also goes against all judicial precedent, which indicates that courts do have the right to order the return of a person from another sovereign country or to order the release of prisoners being held overseas. The court is completely within its jurisdiction to order the U.S. government to take action, even if it can't order El Salvador as a country to do anything. The U.S. has a history and experience with facilitating the return of mistakenly deported individuals.
Yeah.
Justice Sotomayor literally cites judicial precedent in her concurring opinion in the effectuate facilitate ruling, saying, quote, the only argument the government offers in support of its request that United States courts cannot grant relief once a deportee crosses the border is plainly wrong. All judicial precedent notwithstanding, we also literally have an extradition treaty with El Salvador. If Ábrego García is the criminal they claim he is, and if they gave a shit about following Supreme Court and other judicial orders telling them, hey, you fucked up and you need to bring Ábrego García back so he has a day in court, they could move to extradite him to stand trial in the United States, even if El Salvador didn't want to. The problem with that is that they would then have to criminally indict him, and that generally requires any evidence whatsoever of criminal activity, which they could, of course, invent, but that sounds so hard. Can we just leave him there? And then there's also also the fact that we literally have a contract with El
great.
Salvador. We're paying them millions of dollars to hold these inmates. As a party to that contract and agreement, we have negotiating power to determine who stays and who goes. And even without all of that, the laws, the judges, the treaties that all contradict what the government is saying, that there's absolutely no feasible way that they could get Ábrego García back. Isn't it kind of embarrassing for a man who claims to be the Ubermensch, the alpha male, the strongest, biggest, toughest guy you've ever seen, a man who's so good at deals, you've never seen anyone so good at deals, he literally wrote the book on it? Isn't it kind of embarrassing that despite all his big strongman prowess, he can't get one tiny, poor little shithole country to do what he wants?
And he could slap tariffs on him, huh? All of a sudden, he doesn't want to slap tariffs on a country.
I say that with sarcasm. Obviously, El Salvador is not a shithole country. If Trump wanted to, he could get Ábrego García back. But of course, he only uses his strongman tactics to get what he wants. And Lord knows the last thing he's going to do is be told what to do by the likes of some lowly district court judge, and a woman at that. Yuck. And so now we wait to see how much the government complies with this latest court order and the ongoing discovery back and forth with Ábrego García's lawyers while he rots in a gulag. And in the meantime, the Trump administration and Trump himself are amping up rhetoric indicating that they have every intention of continuing to expand deportation efforts, no matter who accidentally gets swept up in the chaos. On Monday, El Salvador President Bukele visited the White House, and the dictator received a friendly, warm welcome and appeared in lockstep with Trump's denial of Ábrego García's rights or innocence, calling him a terrorist and saying it was preposterous to suggest that he, Bukele, could smuggle a terrorist into the United States from El Salvador. During the visit, Trump could be heard urging Bukele to build more prisons because he wants to send some homegrowns down there as well. Trump and others in his administration have doubled down on this idea that we should start sending U.S. citizens down to El Salvador, presumably convicted criminals who can be housed for much less money in El Salvador than.
That, to me, when he was saying that, homegrown criminals, wow, what a slippery slope that is. That would take us down a very dark path. I'm glad that the media focused a lot on those words that he was saying, because it seems to be a lot of people are actually awake on this. They're woke, meaning like they're aware of the Constitution and the historical precedent and the fact that there are parallels to the 1920s, 1930s and the rise of fascism in certain countries in Europe. These type of things happened. And at first, in the 1920s, a lot of Italians, a lot of Germans, a lot of Spanish, they couldn't imagine how authoritarian it would have gotten. You just don't see it. Hindsight's 2020. Like, we're nipping things in the bud now. I'm hoping that this momentum we're seeing with protests, I hope it grows, because we have to put the pressure on. The only reason why the Trump administration has said anything about this is because people have been putting the pressure on. But also be aware that Kilmar is just one guy. I'm sure that there are plenty of other cases we don't know about. That's another really important thing to remember.
Then we're paying to have them stay here. Which types of criminals is unclear. Trump said on Monday that, quote, we have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking. So I guess those ones.
Or we have homegrown criminals who commit fraud, such as President Donald Trump, the only convicted felon who becomes president in American history. So there's that. Are we going to deport him because he's a criminal, right?
The problem with that proposition is that it is not legal. Trump has said he sent Attorney General Pam Bondi on a mission to study the law to determine whether it's legal. When pressed to answer whether or not it is legal, Bondi completely evaded the question at a press conference earlier this week, which would have gotten her an F in law school had she been given a research assignment and then just decided not to answer it. So it sounds like she's got her work cut out for her, though I'm sure she'll come up with something creative. The reality is that there are no laws that give the government the right to deport citizens. Deportation laws are part of the immigration system. Citizens are not in the immigration system. The laws don't apply to them. Naturalized citizens, those that weren't born citizens but went through the correct path to obtain full citizenship, are also protected. Their citizenship is only revoked under the rare circumstance where they obtained it through fraudulent means, so it was never legitimate to begin with. But citizens cannot be deported to a Salvadorian gulag under any circumstances, under any law, nor under the Constitution. It flies in the face of our protected rights as citizens. It flies in the face of the Eighth Amendment protection against cruel and unusual punishment, among so many other rights that would be violated if any citizen were simply up for deportation at the whim of the government. Pam Bondi may find something to point to lie and say that we can send citizens to foreign prisons, but please know whatever she says, according to every other legal expert, will be an incorrect or flagrantly deceitful interpretation of the law. If we get to a point where citizens are being deported, it will be because we have reached a point where the regime is no longer even pretending to be operating within the confines of any law. And we will get there through cases like the Ábrego García case and through the continued erosion of the rights of immigrants. Immigrants continue to be deported to Secot in El Salvador, most without full due process rights. Reports are also coming out that the Trump administration is using the Social Security Administration to attack immigrants, deliberately placing very much alive immigrants on the death master file. This means that immigrants who have Social Security numbers legally obtained through various means could be added to the list of dead people's Social Security numbers. This list is in place to ensure that no one is using the number of a dead person to obtain benefits or otherwise defraud the government.
Okay, that's new information. I didn't know about that. Let me look at the comments here. I got a lot of good comments. Paul, good to see you here. Yeah, the president got Tate on a plane, no problem, despite Tate being actually facing criminal charges. I have not watched the Ordinary Things video on Mussolini yet. I should have reacted to that. Maybe I'll react to it next Friday. But I heard it's really good. And of course, the parallels are stark, Brando. I used to teach about Mussolini to high schoolers. And I vividly remember teaching about Mussolini when Trump first ran for president in 2015. And even back then, I was like, "Oh, this is very Mussolini-like. This Trump guy reminds me of Mussolini." Yeah, Mussolini was a media guy. He was a media man. He knew how to convince the masses, win them over. And basically, he would be a reality TV star today if he was around today, no doubt. And Mussolini, like there's a lot of similarities in terms of their, like he was kind of apolitical. He was a demagogue who used populist rhetoric, but really was ultimately self-serving in the end. We found out it was all about just his own personal power versus instead of anything else. And I think it's the same thing with Trump. But yeah, that's I definitely think that video, it's good. I'm glad that he released it now. Cool Banana says Trump will pardon literal violent domestic terrorists. Yeah, the January 6th rioters, some which were pedos, and then pretend like he cannot return someone unjustly deported. What a joke. He's a traitor to the country. Yeah, he should be impeached for this. He should absolutely be impeached for this. Do you think Reagan should have been impeached for Iran-Contra? Yes, he should have been impeached for that. However, I will add a caveat here. I don't know if there was enough evidence to convict him, so he probably would not have been kicked out of office. So maybe that's what some members of Congress recognized back then. They're like, the evidence is kind of shaky to actually show that Reagan was directly involved with this, even though he probably was. We don't have that visible to us. So yeah, you notice how Trump is best friends with all the worst dictators around the world? Huh, what a coincidence. Why is that? Yeah, this is real fascism, and it's probably only going to get worse. Deport Trump and Musk. Yeah, they're both criminals. Musk also entered the country illegally, so you're going to deport him? I think the founding fathers did predict a world where the president would try to act quickly. That's the thing. Like, that's why the Constitution is the way it is. That's why it limits the president as much as it does. Yeah, the technology they didn't predict. They didn't realize that the internet would exist, but still, I think they tried to envision something like that. They knew that the power of the presidency would probably naturally grow on its own, and so explicitly limiting that power was really important to many of them. Not all of them. Very good point there, Cool Banana. Silly Potato, glad you're here. Okay, back to the video here. This is a good video. She's doing a great job.
Having your social security number put on the dead list while you are still very much alive has devastating consequences because it shuts you out of literally everything. Your bank accounts, your ability to work, your literal existence is wiped clean. Anytime you try to do anything, you will be flagged as fraudulent. It's been reported that 6,000 people have been added to the death master file despite being known to be
Jeez.
alive. According to the Brookings Institute, they're described as mostly Latino immigrants whose legal right to stay in the country has been revoked due to criminal activity or has expired. And they're considering adding more names to the list. And they're getting rid of anyone who stands in their way. A senior Social Security executive was fired after arguing that adding numbers of alive people to the dead list was probably illegal. The goal is to avoid any nuisance arguments about due process or other rights by making life as difficult as possible in the US so immigrants will simply self-deport. Unfortunately, by economically blacklisting immigrants by adding their social security numbers to the death list, those immigrants who were paying taxes and paying into the social security system will not have the means to leave and will instead likely work for the underground economy, making them more vulnerable and also removing that tax income from the federal budget. And immigrants pay an enormous amount of money into taxes to the federal government.
They do.
According to the Brookings Institute, they paid in $25 billion to Social Security alone in 2022. But of course, arguing in favor of the contributions that immigrants make to our country is a waste of breath when the end goal is based in white Christian nationalist ideology. The motivator isn't economic, it's hate. Social Security be damned. To that end, the Trump administration has made great efforts to not only take actions that are aimed at scaring immigrant populations, like detaining Mahmoud Khalil for speaking out against the genocide in Gaza, or using the deportation of immigrants to Secot as a photo shoot opportunity, or sending strongly worded emails telling immigrants that their status has been canceled and to leave the country within 7 days, emails that on multiple occasions have been sent to US-born immigration lawyers, allegedly in error, likely as a scare tactic. But the administration has also produced a multi-million-dollar ad campaign telling immigrants to self-deport now or face consequences.
President Trump has a clear message for those that are in our country illegally. Leave now. If you don't, we will find you and we will deport you. You will never return.
To a certain extent, the fear campaign is working. It's making a number of immigrants consider.
I just noticed that behind her, you see the Jimmy Carter, Walter Mondale poster from his campaign in 1976. That's pretty cool.
Their options. But on the other hand, many do not have the ability to self-deport because that requires money and also because they don't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah.
NPR recently reported, as Adam Isaacson from the Washington Office on Latin America, a research and advocacy group, puts it, there's not that much you can do to make the experience more miserable for people than the conditions that they're fleeing to begin with.
Mhm.
This means that the self-deportation plan won't work and will instead just
What a surprise.
make life absolutely fucking miserable for all the people around the country who are stuck here. Some are opting to pull their children from school, to stay indoors to avoid detection, literally spending all day inside. Many are working to obtain passports for their US-born children so they can eventually come back if they do leave. Children as young as kindergarten are terrified for their parents' safety and struggling with mental health issues. NPR quoted one 6-year-old who's recently been suffering from panic attacks, saying about her mother, quote, "I worry something will happen to her, like something will get her." Day-to-day life for immigrants here has become unbearable, and many are considering leaving, but leaving also presents major dangers and difficulties if it's even possible at all. The CBP One app, created under the Biden administration to help streamline immigration processes, has been rebranded as CBP Home. People who use the CBP One app to immigrate have been advised to leave the country because their entry wasn't valid. And now the CBP Home app is being used to allow people to notify the government of their intent to voluntarily depart from the US. Trump is even considering offering a stipend and an airplane ticket to any immigrant here illegally who chooses to self-deport, which does get around that pesky part where moving to a different country is expensive and difficult, but also it would require people here illegally to report themselves to the government. Their names would absolutely be put on some sort of list, and their ability to ever come back again would almost definitely be zero. So it's
and also they're going to go to a country that's not their home. It really isn't anymore. Like they've built lives. They've built their lives here. Like, when you move to a new country and you're there for many years, that's your new home. Like, it's like they would have to start all over in a foreign country, really, which is kind of ironic to say, but a lot of these people were brought as kids. You know, they're not So now they're adults and they've grown up most of their life. They've lived in the United States, and you're asking them to go to a country where they happen to be born in, maybe, but they don't have any. Their identity isn't even tied to that old country anymore. Their identity is American, so it's absurd.
Clear how they plan to swing that, but it will certainly be used as a way for him to point at and say, look, I'm being so nice. I'm being so generous and understanding. They don't deserve it, but I am, because I'm just that kind of guy. And so this is how it starts. Inhumane treatment of immigrants who may or may not be here legally, who may or may not have gang affiliation, who may or may not have committed any crimes. We don't know, because they've been whisked away to El Salvador without due process. When the government gets caught in the act of denying due process rights and deporting someone in error, they can say, oops, our bad, but nothing can be done now. It's out of our hands. They can remove the lawful immigration status of anyone like Mahmoud Khalil, who they deem have used speech that threatens U.S. national security. I imagine that we are not far from Pam Bondi arguing that naturalized citizens can have their status revoked because it was obtained fraudulently, and then make up some fraud as a pretext. Then, of course, will be the U.S. citizens who are criminals. Perhaps we can't deport them, but we could lease some land from El Salvador like we do in Guantanamo and send our citizens there, no problem. And we can export the management of those prisons to El Salvador, just like we have private prisons on U.S. soil. And next will be dissenting voices, even of citizens, even of non-criminal citizens, who speak out in a way the government doesn't like. For now, they're stopping short at executive orders against law firms, at removing security statuses of Trump's named foes. But eventually, we'll have gone down the list of named foes, and then there will just be more general categories to go after: lawyers, journalists, leftists. As Justice Sotomayor put it in her concurring opinion in the Ábrego García case, quote, the government's argument implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence, so long as it does so before a court can intervene. Of course, in the ideal world for Trump, we will eventually get to a point where the courts cannot intervene, which is why the current standoff in a Maryland district court over the deportation of one man has the entire country holding its breath. We don't know if the government will cooperate with this latest order for depositions and turning over of documents and information. And if they don't, we don't know if this judge will order sanctions or hold the government in contempt, something she has indicated she's considering. And if she does hold the government in contempt of court, that means that she can issue daily fines or order jail time for the offending party until they cooperate. This will likely ratchet up tension between the executive and judicial branches.
You think?
And just a few hours ago, those tensions were raised further when another judge, Judge Boasberg in D.C., who's been overseeing the case in which he ordered planes carrying Venezuelan immigrants to El Salvador to be returned to the United States, an order which was not followed. He issued a ruling in which he found probable cause to find the government in criminal contempt of the court. This means that
they said the planes were already on their way, so we there's nothing we can do to bring them back. That's what they said. Hands are tied.
He's determined, after giving the government numerous opportunities to explain their actions related to defying his order to turn the planes around, that their refusal to cooperate and their defiance of his order to turn the planes around likely amounts to criminal contempt. He's given the government until April 23rd to comply, or he'll begin contempt proceedings, which will include ordering declarations or live witness testimony to determine who exactly made the call to defy his ruling. Once that person or persons is determined, he will request that the contempt be prosecuted by an attorney for the government. And Boasberg likely foresaw the political fight that would ensue when he added the line, quote, if the government declines or the interest of justice requires, the court will appoint another attorney to prosecute the contempt. And this is all pursuant to the federal rules of criminal procedure. He's not making this up. The Trump administration will invariably spin Judge Boasberg's ruling today, along with any potential contempt proceedings brought by Judge Zinnes in the Ábrego García case, into clearly politically motivated judicial overreach. Not only could Trump order the DOJ not to prosecute the contempt proceedings ordered by the judge, the court marshals that would be in charge of jailing anyone found in contempt are under the direction of the executive branch. So feasibly, the president could order the marshals not to comply, which is illegal, but that's illegal in a way that feels like the Trump administration could argue their way around in the name of executive power. From there, I can't predict what will happen. As everything in the last 3 months, we are entering uncharted territory. But I have no doubt that the ghouls pulling the strings behind the scenes have already drafted their response, and I cannot imagine that it's a good one for the rule of law, democracy, or all of our collective rights. As Justice Sotomayor pointed out, if the government can get away with denying due process rights to the immigrants, there is nothing to stop them from denying due process rights to all of us. If you'd like to support my work, I recommend joining me over on Patreon, where I just launched the Why America Co-Learning Lab.
Well, a great video. I'm going to like this video. This is good job, Legia, with this. She put it very well, way better than I did. And props to the senator for the senator from Connecticut, what's his name again? Van Hollen. Props to him for at least going down there. And sure, it might be a photo op and we don't know what's actually happening, but props to him for actually going there. Got a question from... Oh, yeah, that's a great... Yeah. This is the America I love too, Cool Banana. There's the question. I don't understand how SCOTUS could overrule a whole article or amendment of the Constitution. No, they can't. They can't do that. They can reinterpret it. They can interpret its meaning differently, but they can't just overrule a part of the Constitution. They've never done that before. They've never rendered any part of the Constitution null and void. The only thing that can do that are additional amendments. Yeah, so we live in dark times. I recommend protesting, contacting. I've contacted my members of Congress, your representative, your senators, let them know that Congress needs to do something. They need to step in because I think the legal battle will be ongoing for a long time, and it's going to be up to the public to put pressure on the politicians. Remember that Congress, they work for us. That's the people's branch of government. So that's where your voices need to be heard. Is you need to be letting your representatives know. We can't really control what the courts do. We can't control what the president does and his executive branch officials. But if you put pressure on the legislative branch, they do generally respond, even if it's just token, even if it's just lip service. At the very least, they can be fired next year. And you can tell them, we're going to fire you if you don't impeach the president. I do think Trump should be impeached for this. I mean, there's a whole list of at least 12 things that he's done that's unconstitutional at this point. So, but I think this is the most clear evidence we have now that he went against the Constitution. Already we've had, he's broken the emoluments clause. He's banned birthright citizenship with an executive order, not enforcing the TikTok ban, firing inspectors generals, freezing foreign aids programs, freezing trillions of dollars in domestic grants, dismantling USAID, trying to force what's taught in K-12 schools, designating English as an official language, can't do that, dismantling the Department of Education, shipping legal residents to foreign prisons, and then now number 12 that I have is ignoring Supreme Court order to return wrongfully deported person. So far, we'll see if they do anything different, but I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, those are the 12 ways so far, at least that the president has went against the Constitution in his second term alone. So I think you should be angry about this. Maybe you voted for him. If you voted for him, I want to hear your thoughts because most of you did not vote for him, I understand. What do you think of RFK Jr., what he said about autism? Insensitive. Yeah, pretty ignorant. I don't think he understands. Like, I have friends who are on the spectrum, and they're quite successful. My friends that I have, they're on the spectrum. So I don't understand what he was even talking about. I don't even know if he understands what he was talking about, but it came across as very offensive to many folks on the spectrum for sure, and people in general. Yeah. I saw on Twitter a few days ago, you disagree with Hassan that Dems shouldn't be in favor of free trade. I was just curious on exactly why. I'm a free trade guy. I think it's fair to criticize these corporations who have shipped these jobs overseas, who have outsourced everything to a point where workers' rights have been extremely diminished. However, at the same time, like, what's the alternative? Like, the computer that Hassan was talking on, is a lot cheaper, and he's able to do everything with all the equipment that we have, to record things. That would be thousands of dollars more if we didn't have free trade. So it's like, okay, are you willing to pay all that extra money? You can't have it both ways. So I just think it's like an oversimplification. Like it's just a completely ignorant of just how economics works. We are generally better off with free trade. The freer, the better, because of specialization. It's like the idea that countries have a comparative advantage to produce certain goods or services. This idea, it's fundamental in understanding economics, and it's why free trade makes us more prosperous overall. So you can't just ignore these basic economic concepts. Even if there are these negative externalities that happen because of free trade, you should solve those separately. You shouldn't just unravel the entire system. It's not a perfect system, but it doesn't mean it's like we should get rid of the entire system. Like the alternative, I guess, is an entirely new economic system, which what you're going to go back to feudalism, you're going to have communism. What else are you going to do? So we have to reform capitalism instead of just completely getting rid of it. That was my whole thing about my whole criticism about his take. Good job, Silly Potato. Silly Potato is called the representative. Heck yeah. All right. Okay, I have a meeting at 10 I forgot about, so I better get off here. But thank you for being here. I do this every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Central. Send me videos to react to, usually American political history, but sometimes economics or geography even. But geography, the heck with geography these days. We are living through one constitutional crisis after another. So hang in there, but please be loud and talk to your family and friends who voted for Trump and tell them, hey, did you know that he's doing unconstitutional things? Just, you don't have to be nice about it, but just please be nice about it is what I'm saying. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but just please, like I let my dad know, hey, he's breaking the Constitution. Usually my dad doesn't respond anymore because I don't think he is ready to accept it yet, but I think he will be eventually. Anyway, have a good weekend. Take care. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.